shares his journey. The life lessons, challenges, and defining moments that shaped his voice as an author. Each episode explores the inspiration behind his books, the purpose in every story, and features select passages that bring his message to life. Meet his incredible friends and learn where his books are available, and how to stay connected as his future projects continue to unfold. So relax, settle into the groove, and let the jazz guide you into his world of storytelling and truth. Powered by SKST Radio Network and Street Grind Entertainment.
Hello, and welcome to my first podcast. This is a podcast, Books by Anthony Owens, and my name is Anthony Owens, and I'm honored to have a special guest in the audience with me today, my narrator, Malik Washington. But before I get started, we'll talk about some other stuff. Let me go ahead and tell you who I am. I was born in a small place called Dawson, Georgia, and I have a brother who was born there as well. And my mother took us from Georgia to New York. And Dawson, Georgia is about 2.5 hours away from Atlanta. So it's a small town where they do a lot of growing of pecans and peanuts and things of that sort. But anyway, the transition from Georgia to New York was a big shock for my mother, because she was only actually 21 at the time, but she had me at 19. And moving to New York there was a lot of challenges, because she wasn't properly educated. She didn't have all the tools that she really needed to confront, or be prepared for the big city life of New York. And so as a child, we struggled a lot. I mean, things were pretty bad. And so growing up in Brooklyn, it was challenging in a lot of ways, because there was a lot of crime around my brother and just the family in general. And there was times when we just struggled financially, didn't have enough money to provide for foods and necessary things that we needed. So oftentimes we just went without, right? So the reason why I'm doing a podcast, and for those who already don't know, I do social media live, and I do a lot of talking about different issues that a lot of people go through in life: domestic abuse, single parenting, fatherlessness, discrimination, bullying, and a number of other topics that I love talking about on social media, because there's a lot of people that are going through really, really difficult times. And I believe that, the traumas that we go through and the challenges that we go through in life, those should not define who we are as individuals. And so I started, I got to a point where I wanted to write about things like that, the things that I've gone through. And I'm going to go ahead and go back a little bit to my childhood. And a lot of the stuff that I wrote about, the difficult issues that I dealt with, are coming from the, you're seeing all these different things from the point of view of a child, right? From someone who's young. And as a child, when you're experiencing like domestic abuse and you're seeing your mother being abused and things like that, it leaves a terrible mark on you as a child, because you don't know how to process a lot of those things. So I want to talk about a lot of things that we go through in life. And so I wrote this down, and I want to read this because this is my first podcast and I don't want to mess it up. So I started the podcast because I know what it feels like to struggle quietly. I know what it feels like to carry responsibility, pressure, disappointment, and pain while still trying to move forward. Through my books, my life experience, military service, fatherhood journey, and personal setbacks, I've learned that people don't just need motivation, they need honesty, hope, and real conversations. This podcast is a place where we could talk about resilience, growth, leadership, family, healing, and choosing not to give up even when life gets difficult. So for a long time as an adult, I didn't even know if I had a purpose in life. I didn't even know what my purpose was until I started writing these books. And then I realized that my main goal now in life is to try to help people help themselves. And I'll go back, but let me introduce Malik Washington. So I've written 6 books, and Malik fortunately, he's the narrator of all of them except for the children's book. So there's an interesting story about meeting this young man here. when I wrote my first book, I went into the studio, and after I finally found someone who would give me a decent price, I went into the studio. I had my headset on, had my book in my hand. I was going to crush it because I wrote the book, right? But I found out really quickly that there's a big difference between reading a book and narrating a book. And fortunately for me, Malik knew that I didn't have any money. He saw my pockets turned inside out and saw my lips were chapped a little bit. Because when you're hungry, your lips get chapped a little bit. So he saw that. So he gave me an excellent price, and he has a great voice. And so as a narrator, he worked a great deal for me. And I've been using him for all of my books, like I said, with the exception of the children's book. Malik, thank you for joining me.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.
So I'm going to be talking about today. I'm not going to go through all of my books in one sitting, right? Obviously.
Sure.
So because there's a lot of stuff I want to, unwind. But I want to talk about syrup sandwiches, and what did you think about it? You know what? Let me back up. I'm going a little bit too far. Let me tell everybody about the challenges of writing, first of all, because I believe that everybody has a story in them. And because of the things that I had gone through growing up, I wanted to write about them. I wanted to find out a way to make sure that people don't go through some of the same things that I've gone through. And so I put all that stuff into a book, or so-called book, and I kept procrastinating. It took me years to do this first book, years. And what I was doing was I was making excuses, right? Like it was too difficult. I don't know what I'm doing. It's too hard. I've never done it before. I don't know anybody who has written a book. So it took me for a long time to get to that point where I was really serious about it. And after the pandemic, that's when it really became serious for me to get this out there. Because during the pandemic, a lot of people lost loved ones and lost their jobs. And it was just a terrible time. And so I wanted to write something that would give people some hope, right? Give people some belief in that they can make it through whatever they're going through. And so that was the reason why I wrote it. But trying to write the book about all the trauma that you've gone through was really challenging, because there were so many times when I had to stop writing, and there was tears that would come to my eyes, because I would think about all those horrific things that I had gone through. But it was also comforting, right? It was almost like a relief, because I was letting something go, and so and I tell people all the time on my social media platform, it's a good idea to journal things, write things down, right? Because the biggest thing that a lot of people deal with is they have a lot of things in their mind, but they always keep it up there, right? When you get it out of your mind and onto the paper, you can do a lot of things with that, right? You can write books, you can feel better, right? It's a way of releasing. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. Yeah.
And so, I'm honored and I'm blessed to be able to say that I've experienced those terrible things, because it helped to make me who I am today. And so, without further ado, when you were doing syrup sandwiches, the narration in it, tell me what you thought about the book.
So I think the difficult part about narration, or the part that you wouldn't expect, is when you're focused on reading a book for delivery's sake. A lot of times you tend to miss the content. Like, you don't necessarily internalize what you're reading as much when there's a performative aspect to it, right? Because you're thinking more about, okay, what's the best way for me to say this? Or did I say this and not use the proper tone that would go along with the feeling of this sentence, right? So you end up with a very fragmented view of whatever it is that you're doing, because you're looking at it in pieces, right? Here's the chapter, here's where it warmed up, I might have spoke a certain way, here's where the conflict is, I might have said it a little bit different, right? And then you're looking at each of these segments in parts, and sometimes it's hard to catch the whole, right? So to answer your question directly, I thought it was very honest. It's very honest, it's very it's a somber read, right? Like, you're not going to read this book and be like, "Wow, I'm so happy." It's got comedy in it, so not intentionally, I don't think. Well, maybe partially intentionally, but it's not intended to be funny, and I enjoyed it because it gave me a great perspective. There's lots of surprises in there in terms of where you think things might go, and it captures a certain era in time, right? Like there's no cell phones in this time, so there's a certain sort of, without spoiling too much about the book, he and his brother, they spent a lot of time on fire escape outside of their apartment, and I know this is a real thing. And you know the nature of that relationship. There's another word I want to use I can't come up with, but it's a special kind of relationship when we look back at it now because it's not polluted by technology. Like if you and your brother were 12 now living in that same Bushwick apartment, y'all would both be on the other side of the apartment on the phone, right? You wouldn't have a candy routine. You wouldn't have a let me go to Mr. Ruiz's shop. You wouldn't have the situation where you sit out there and dream together as you look at what you have in your environment, right? So whenever you hear a story or watch a movie or whatever that's of that era, to me it's kind of special, and it's much more sincere is the word I used before, but there's an honesty, there's a authenticity to it that we don't really have anymore in today's environment. We've lost that with technology. So at any rate, I thought it was a good book, and the choose not to give up is almost like woven into the content, right? Like if you read the title alone, you might walk away thinking that this was a what you call it? Well, no, the self-help books.
Oh no!
You might think it's a self-help book because it says "choose not to give up," right? No, you don't get that sort of command in a title, right? But if you keep that thought process in mind, choose not to give up, as you read the book, then what you probably walk away and say is syrup sandwiches. He chose not to give up, and you walk away with it from this is how he made it through what he did, what he had to go through, and how and why he didn't give up. He chose not to.
Right. And so syrup sandwiches, and let me tell the audience, one of the reasons why I named it syrup sandwiches is because, like I said earlier, we struggle financially, and a lot of times we didn't have any, real food to eat. And so we made sandwiches that were made out of condiments, ketchup, mustard, mayonnaise, syrup, right? And I just enjoy syrup, obviously, because it was sweet, right? But the book, it has nothing to do about food. It's about the struggles and the challenges and the trauma that many of us go through, because we all, as long as we live, we're going to go through something difficult. We're going to go through some challenging times and some trauma, and how we deal with those traumas and how we deal with these difficult situations is what makes and what defines us, right? Mm-hmm. And I said earlier, we shouldn't be defined by our traumas and our struggles. And so I wholeheartedly believe that and I believe in three principles. I believe that if you believe in your deity, if you believe in yourself, and you choose not to give up, with those three things right there, I believe you can accomplish anything. And so I push that that message a lot, especially when I go to the schools and to the shelters, and I speak to people about the different challenges that they're going through in their life, and how do they navigate it, right? And a lot of times people don't even believe that they can do it. People don't believe that they have the ability to see past where they are.
Sure.
And so when you get stuck in a position like that, you don't get past it.
No,
you really don't.
You don't. So as long as you think you won't get past it, you won't.
Right. And so I've been led, and I've come to this point now where I'm that person who's trying to bridge that gap between not having and having, not knowing and knowing, right? And so I'm appreciative of where I'm at now, and I just I feel honored to be able to have made a difference in the lives of some people just from just one of my books.
Sure.
Yeah, and so I'm really excited about doing this podcast because I want to be able to talk about different topics, topics that's real life, right? Stuff that people go through on a daily basis, like even on my social media platform. And for those who are not following me on any of my social media platforms, you can follow me at my handle is Books by Anthony Owens. That's it, Books by Anthony Owens. TikTok, Instagram. Look me up, follow me, and I'm very, very approachable. I like to go live. I like to engage with my readers and just talk to them, right? And I have a great group of people who's up there every time I come, right? I got some great moderators. Before I forget, SKST Radio broadcast station. These people are phenomenal. Her name is Cammie Grayson, and she's the CEO. And I tell you what, it's a phenomenal setup. She can actually do a podcast with anybody in any location, and her prices are phenomenal. I mean, they are amazing. When I first met her, I was floored by her professionalism and the way that she do things, man. It's just amazing. So if you guys are even remotely interested in doing a podcast, and for those of you who already have books and things that you want to push out there, a podcast is a good way to get it out there. So you can reach her at SKST Booking, BOOKING, @gmail.com. And she didn't know I was going to say anything about that. I just wanted to do it because I appreciate her. I appreciate her for being just, so, nice and thoughtful and just professional. I really appreciate it. So once again, SKST Booking @gmail.com. So let's go on. This is another thing I want to talk about. So how do you keep going when life gives you every reason to stop? Think about that for a second. How do you keep going when life gives you every reason to stop? And so there's a lot of times when things happen in our life that we just don't understand, right? We're trying to figure out, why these different things are happening to me and why is my life, not going the way that I wanted it to go. Just understand this, it's gonna happen, right? That's just the nature of life. That's how things are. It's going to happen. And, I personally believe that nothing terrible is going to last forever. It's just like sometimes nothing good may not last forever either, So, but you got to be able to recognize that even when you're down, even when you're at a point where you feel like you can't take it anymore. And I tell my panel this all the time. It's okay to bend, but don't break, right? You may get stressed out. You may be to a point where you feel like you can't make it anymore. But you're going to have to reach down and say that, you know what? I can do it because I know that I'm worthy, right? There's enough about me that I know I can do it, even when you don't feel like you can, right? There are other people that depend on you, and you may not even know it. People who are watching you. People, learn from other people sometimes. And so when they see you go through something and come out, and you're doing well, that motivates them, So there's a lot of things that you can do as an individual that you're not even aware of that influences other people. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, both ways. In fact, I think back to your original question, like, how do you find a way to keep going, even when you feel like it's not going to work out well?
Right.
That's a theme that's very prevalent in this book. Really, probably all of your books, but especially this one, as your mother is constantly in a situation where she's got to, move or come up with money or get rid of the guy that she's dealing with who's not treating the family right?
Right.
So, of course, you would wonder at that time, like, how is she going to get past this? And, anyone can read the book and kind of put themselves in that shoe or in those shoes. But at the same time, the question kind of becomes, all right, at least along the lines of what you were saying, people look at you and they see how you persevered, but they also look at you and see when you fail. They also look at you and see when you don't respond to situations a certain way, right? And I think that this book kind of gives a good framework on how you saw your mother, admittedly, make mistakes that weren't great for the family. More along the lines of either what she hadn't learned or just the absence of a man in her life, or just kind of the necessity for one. There's certain things she probably dealt with that she wouldn't have had to if things were going well, right? So that allowed you to look in, almost third party, even though you're really involved in it, right? You're right there in the house, but it allows you to look in and kind of decide, here's what I'll never be. Here's what I'll always be.
And it's interesting that you said that, because all the men that were in my family, they were all abusive, right? they would beat up on the women, and I couldn't understand it as a child. I'm seeing this, and I felt bad for the women. Right? I felt really bad that that they had to go through the things that they were going through. And what I've learned from them, because they didn't show me anything, but I learned how not to be. Right? I knew that it was wrong. I knew that I despised that. So I knew that I didn't want to be like that. So, unbeknownst to them, they didn't realize what they did. They made me better.
Right.
And I'm glad I didn't turn out like that, bro, to be honest with you. And then I wrote something else where I said I started this podcast, to have real conversations about struggle, about life, struggle, resilience, leadership, fatherhood, healing, and purpose, right? And I said too many people are suffering silently. I said that earlier, right? Giving up too soon or believing their circumstances define them. Through honest discussion and personal experience, I want this platform to remind people that difficult beginnings do not have to become permanent endings. And so I am very, very serious about trying to help people, right? Help themselves, right? Because I'm not a healer, I'm not a savior, I'm not any of those. I'm just a man telling somebody about something, right? Basically, right? Telling them about my experiences. And so, speaking of experiences, I served 20 years in the Navy, and not having a father in the household, not having anyone I could really, a man that I can actually confide in and talk to and say, hey, you think this is a good idea? Should I go into the military? What branch should I go in, or anything, right? I just made it up on my own. I said, I had a cousin that had gone into the Army, so I said, I'll just go to the Navy.
Right.
Let's go to the Navy. Right? So,
it's funny. I didn't. Again, especially when you're reading a book for performance versus absorption, I didn't even stop to think. Like if I were reading this book on my own, I might run across something, stop reading for a minute and just kind of ponder on it and then continue from there, right? But when you're doing it for performance, it's not quite the same. Right. You're not absorbing it the same. But I never even thought about that. Like in general, I would probably say that the average person I know who went into the military knew someone that was in the military, like their father or their big brother or somebody like that, right? But yeah, that's almost a testament to how much you wanted to get away from the environment you were in. Like, I can't stay in this Brooklyn place no more. How can I get out of here? Yeah. And you took the best road out. And I think that's sort of a testament to the willingness to survive by taking something that was completely foreign to you.
It was definitely foreign. So foreign that I didn't even realize I had to know how to swim to go into the Navy.
Oh, that's a good chapter there.
Yeah, so I don't really want to give too much away about the book, folks. And if you haven't gotten the books, one of the ways you can get them is on my website is www.antowens.com, or you can go to Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Ingram Sparks. So the book is out there all over the place. And unfortunately for me, I'm lucky enough to have it also in Audible, right? Because people have busy lives. They don't have time sometimes to sit down and hold a book, read a book. Life is busy. Life is life.
Life is life.
And so, the Audible, is a good thing for that, because, you can work out and listen to the book. You can go for a walk and listen to the book. There's a lot of things you can do and still, actually, have the benefit of absorbing a book.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
So let me ask you another question. How long have you been narrating?
Your book was the first book I narrated. However, it was. What's even funnier, audience, is where we are right now, and didn't realize my old studio is literally 2 doors down. So maybe 40 feet away from where we are right now is when he realized that he, in fact, was not a narrator. So your book was the first book that I narrated, but I've done a lot of voiceovers. Right. I've done a lot of voiceovers, and it's kind of the same thing, just way shorter.
Yeah.
Like way shorter. So it kind of goes back to the same thing. Like I could sit and do a voiceover, and it might be a deal for McDonald's or something like that.
Right.
And then the moment it's over with, I forgot exactly how much it was because the content wasn't important. It was the delivery that was so much more important. So yeah, I've been doing voiceover since I don't know, past 16 years, maybe since 2010.
And since you've done 5 books for me,
Five.
and that last one was a doozy because it was very long. It was very long, folks. It was. I had to bring him back from the dead to do that because after the book that I thought was going to be my last book, he said he was done. I'm not doing any more books. Remember that? I'm not doing any more books. It's just too much work. I'm done. So when I decided to do part 2 of my suspense thriller, Reasons, I went knocking on his door again and said, "Hey, I need some help there, buddy. Can you do this for me?" He was very reluctant. He was very reluctant. That's the original, and that's part 2. That's the one that was longer, right? Longer than all of my other books.
Yeah.
And so it took some real effort for him to do it, and some real dollars for him to do it.
Real. But I did it, and I enjoyed it. And no. That was last.
That was the last one.
Before that was the short stories, right?
The short story, the book of short stories. Yeah,
Okay.
the book.
Okay.
It's called The Day We Forgot to Smile. That was another book that was longer than the other 2. So it was like it was getting long. Each book
They got progressively longer.
So
you had more to say over time. That's all.
yeah, well, I think I'm out of words now. I think I'm done, everyone. I'm going to focus on another avenue. No, I think I'm done. I think I'm done writing. Maybe now, into the movie and other stuff, right? Something. What's that look for?
Nothing, man. I'm just listening.
Okay. but back to Brooklyn, right? So some of the things that I saw as a child that I have not forgotten, right? Like a person being ran over by a train and watching all the guts and the brains and torso and everything just fall to the street, right? As a child, that was pretty traumatic, right? And I could see it right now in my eyes, right in the back of my mind. I still think about that, but and that just goes to show, right? We can heal from stuff, but sometimes we just don't forget it, right?
Yeah,
And
I
so,
agree with that. In fact, I don't think you ever forget it.
Well, yeah,
it's like the death of a loved one or like a parent.
Speaking of death of a loved one, I just lost my mother in February, and that was, and it was tough, right? Because I felt real lonely all of a sudden, right? Even though I had my wife and everybody else, I felt real lonely. Because that was the only parent I know. My father wasn't there, so
yeah,
she was the only parent I know.
She's mother and father,
right? And she even said that before, right?
And she said in the book, right?
Yeah, she said it. Yeah. So, but the thing about it, though, I've always been there for her. I had done but love for her, since I've been a child, and to be able to have a parent to the age that I am is a blessing, right? It's an honor, and so that helps me get some solace and just not soaking in and being like consumed with grief and all that. So that helps a lot. It
yes,
really does.
Yes.
Now, if I had been one of those children that didn't get along with their parent or mother or whatever, and you guys are always at each other and you didn't see her that much, you didn't talk to her that much, then it may
you'd be in terrible shape, most likely.
Right.
Yeah.
So
I think at the end of anything, be it a relationship or a job, or you're just moving away, at the closure of something, it's much easier to digest if you don't have regrets or anything left over that you feel you didn't cover.
Well said.
You know what I mean? And you and your mother had the kind of relationship, at least the way I understood it to be, where there had been so much on the table. There were so many things that had happened, and you guys had a close enough relationship that, unfortunately, when she did pass, thankfully you had, like, there was nothing else I needed to cover. It wasn't like, oh, I forgot to tell her this, or if I had only, you know what I mean?
Right.
The if I had onlys will ruin you.
Right. And I didn't have any of those if I had only, right? And so
right,
that made me feel better.
Yeah, I
But it was tough though.
No, I get it.
Because you were telling about your experience, and you still to this day, So
yeah, it's rough.
It is. I think it's about time for us to take a break.
Some stories you will never forget. Some stories aren't meant to be told. They are meant to be felt. Before the success, there was silence. Before the strength, there was struggle. A childhood built on survival, where even a simple meal meant everything. Syrup sandwiches weren't just food, they were hope. In a world that moved too fast, he stood still, watching, learning, enduring. Through fear, through pain, through the unknown, he didn't give up. Because sometimes, the hardest beginnings create the strongest stories. Syrup sandwiches, a story you will never forget. Coming to theatres soon.
From the heart of the coast where the waves rise high, magazine we lift and amplify stories of love, of strength, of pride, giving back, standing tall side by side. We are the rhythm, we are the voice, community rising, making bold choice. On short drive we shine, we soar. Bay magazine forever, evermore.
Yo, 1 2 1 2 in a place to be. What's happening, people? What I miss? With that being said, man, I go by the name of Mike Dice, Beast by Bro. Yeah, what up? Okay. Peace. Okay. With that, y'all, check it out. What's up? Huh? I don't know.
Yeah.
Right.
All right. Welcome back, everybody. So let me read the back of the book. This is the book, Syrup Sandwiches here, that we were talking about. And like I said, I have 6 books. So each podcast, I'm going to talk about a different book, but I'm going to also talk about other things during the book, right? Like I'm going to talk about the different challenges and why I wrote the books and some of the things in the book that I think the audience would want to know about, right? So this is a particular chapter in here called Greg. Now, Greg, he was abusive. He was abusive when I spoke about earlier. And as a child, seeing my mom abuse, I didn't understand it, right? I didn't understand why she wouldn't just leave him. And I talk about how at first she met him in church, of all places, right? And how at first he would buy some groceries and be nice, and things like that. You got to do things to other people out.
You sure better.
And then it went from being nice to just being cruel. Like a light switch just came on, and so to see that, to see her crying at night, and then as a child, just I was crying, and because there was times I couldn't do anything, right? So just sit there and deal with it, and that stayed with me for a while. But eventually, when we got older, he wound up leaving. He never stayed with us, and come to find out, this guy was married too.
I recall.
He had never taken her to a movie, out to dinner or anything. He had gotten to a point where he was freeloading. So just watching that and not understanding, and even now in situations where some people are in situations where they're dealing with the same kind of stuff, right? And
sure.
They're wondering how to get out of it, and they're probably asking themselves, why are they still in it, right? So a lot of times I think people feel like they don't have any resources. They don't have anywhere to go. They don't have anybody to turn to. So they just deal with it, right? And I really hate that, man. I hate it.
I think it's a combination. Like not only, and maybe they just come together, but not only in this situation was there a clear lack of resources. I mean, the story is called Syrup Sandwiches, so clearly we're already low on resources, right? But even for those who are low on resources, sometimes they still have a self-image that wouldn't allow them to deal with somebody who mistreated them for very long. However, I think sometimes when you're low on resources, you can't help but feel like yourself is low as well.
Yeah.
It's almost like, if I don't have anything, then what am I worth? If I can't get myself out of this situation, then what should I expect me to be able to bring in? almost like a broke man. You're probably not going to find a rich woman to come take care of you, right? You're going to have something in order to get something more.
Right.
So when you don't have much, it's easy to understand how someone feels like they don't deserve much, right? And that's kind of the undercurrent theme that I kind of walked away with, but it's never really spoken
Right.
explicitly in
Right.
the story.
And even though we were poor by all standards, right? I mean, we were. But the people around us was just like it. So we didn't really realize that we were poor because we was born, because everybody's poor, right? But the reality, we were, right? And so I'm going to read a short passage here. Yeah, reading glasses, right? For those who don't. It says, within a few months, this seemingly pleasant guy went from being caring to callous and cruel. He became abusive towards my mother. I would hear them arguing. Then he would hit or choke her. And I could hear her in between breaths telling him, Greg, please stop. At the time Greg's scary behavior started, I was only 9 years old. James was 7. All we could do was cover our ears and cry as we sat in the next room, terrified for our mother. I was overwhelmed with the feeling of complete helplessness when my mother was being abused. Afterwards, I felt as if I should have done something to help her. James and I would talk about how we hated what he was doing to her, and we wished that he would just leave and never come back. James said to me, man, why won't Mama just kick his ass since she's taller than him? The dude looks like a house, I replied. James fell silent. Even at my young age, I realized that Greg's abuse of my mother was hurting James. I had been so worried about my mother at first that I overlooked the effect that all of this was having on my little brother. I saw the two of us as tough young men who had to protect our mother. The reality of it was that we were little kids and had to deal with our own pain caused by being unable to change things. We saw and heard our mother being physically and emotionally abused while we couldn't do anything to protect her. We went to bed many nights, baffled, angry, and afraid. That's a terrible feeling.
Yeah.
Right? Because you don't, not only do you feel like you can't do anything, but you don't know when it's going to end.
Nor do you know how much worse it's going to get.
Good point.
It's like, it is what you know it to be. And initially it wasn't that bad. He wasn't that kind and he wasn't that, friendly to the kids, but he wasn't jumping on your mom at first. Right. So it's like, you don't know how bad it's going to get. You're just watching things degrade, at least in this sort of situation.
So I know I'm all over the place. Just bear with me, folks. But let me read the back of the book, right? For those who don't have the book. It says, Surf Sandwiches, Choose Not to Give Up. It's a true story of survival, perseverance, and purpose. Born in rural Georgia and raised in the tough streets of Brooklyn, Anthony Owens grows up in a world where struggle was constant and dreams were fragile. From nights of hunger soothed by surf sandwiches to the disciplined years that forged his 20-year naval career, Owens charts a journey that proves hardship doesn't have to define you, it can refine you. With raw honesty and heartfelt reflection, he takes readers through moments of poverty, loss, resilience, and redemption, showing how fate, grit, and choice can turn obstacles into opportunity. This is more than a memoir. It's a call to rise above circumstance and claim the power of your own story. In a time when hope can feel distant, Surf Sandwiches reminds us that giving up is never the answer, because sometimes the sweetest victories come from the struggle itself. And I said that because, and I said it earlier, that those challenges and traumas and things that we go through, right, they can make us, right, or they can break us. They can make us into a better person. They can make us stronger. They can make us more compelling and compassionate, or they could just go the opposite direction. Right?
Make into a monster.
Exactly. And so, one thing about having to deal with the things that I did go through was that. Let me go back. Surf sandwiches, when people see surf sandwiches, a lot of them know there's probably something about struggle because surf sandwiches sounds like struggle, right? But those people who are not familiar with the struggle, those people who don't never been through what people who have to go through this are going through, they may have another a level of empathy, right? A level of compassion, because now they realize that this is a real thing, right? But those who have gone through it, they can look back and say, you know what, I was there before, right? I know what it feels like, and so they can rejoice in the fact that they've achieved something. They've gotten past that. And then those that are still going through it, they can read this book and say, you know what, I can make it, right? I know I can. I believe I can. There's hope, right? There's hope. And so I really wrote this book so that people will realize that they can make it, right? They just gotta want to make it, right? They gotta say to themselves they can.
Yeah. No, I get it. I get it. Probably the most important word in that title is choose.
Choose. Because we make choices.
Yeah.
We make
You
choices all
choose
the
to give
time.
up, or you choose to become the monster, or you.
I want to read another. Let me read something in the back of the book. Not the back of the book, but in the back of the book, right? And I think I've read this many times. It says, as a child, can you read this one for me?
Yeah, sure.
The last one on top of this. Mr. Narrator.
Mr. Narrator. I'm not performing for you folks today. As a child, you could say I was a victim. The trauma that I experienced resulted from the actions of others. From bullying and racism to an absentee father and witnessing violence. Many things in my life could have resulted in insurmountable obstacles. Yet, even as a child, somehow, I knew that the way to get out of the life that I did not want and I did not create would be up to me. I could spend time blaming my father and the others who made my life difficult and embracing a victim's mentality. Or I could refuse to be defeated. It wasn't fair and it wasn't my fault. Yet, I was the only one who could change my life. It wouldn't be easy and it wouldn't be fast, but I was determined I would succeed. I decided I would be the person who reversed the negative cycle. I've come to the realization that during my fragile emotional state, the things that helped me overcome the horrors were prayer, laughter, and the belief that I couldn't allow myself to succumb to the things that I could not control. I realized that all that I could do was rock and roll with each punch that life threw at me. And when it knocked me down, I knew that it was not time to throw in the towel, but rather the time to get back up and prepare myself for the next battle.
And that's the last words of my book. That was well done, man.
Thanks, man.
You should be a narrator.
I read every now and again. If somebody was writing a book, then I might be narrating. But,
well, you know what? Let me throw that out there as well. So for those of you who are thinking about writing a book and you want somebody to narrate for you, he can do it from here, where he's at. Like, I didn't even have to go into the studio. I didn't have to do anything. Just send him my work. He did it. I listened to it, made changes if needed, and submitted it, and that was it. So, if you go through the traditional way of doing an audiobook, it's very, very expensive, right? Because they charge by the hour. He charged by the book, by how many pages it is. He's very fair, very reasonable. And like I said before, when he saw me, he saw that I didn't have much money. He said, "Hey, I'll help you out, broke dude." He said, "You look like you still eating surf sandwiches."
That's not what happened at all.
He said, "You look like you still eating surf sandwiches. Let me give you a good deal."
What happened was, in the first 20 minutes, when he realized that he was only on page 2, I immediately took pity and said, "Let me help this guy."
Yeah.
But he did not look broke.
That's a good thing.
And he still does not.
Yeah. So, being bullied in school. Let me talk about bullying.
Okay.
I was bullied in school. I was very shy, extremely shy and quiet. I was tall. I was still tall, and I was slim, extremely slim, not like I am now. Right? But and people always want to challenge me, and you know, it's not a good feeling to be bullied, right? Or have to fight to prove yourself, or fight just to, you know, defend yourself. And I had to fight. I had to fight, right? And luckily for me, I was a good fighter, right? Or I would have got my behind beat. So, but the fact is, you know, some people can't fight well, and some people are afraid, and they get picked on and bullied, and some people even kill themselves because they can't deal with the pressure. Right?
Absolutely.
So it's a terrible thing, right? Especially now with it cyberbullying and everything. And so no one has the right to be bullied, right? Let me just say this for everybody who's listening. Even, you know, on my social media platforms, I tell people this all the time. We as individuals, we as humans, we don't have a right to judge other people, right? We don't have a right to tell somebody who they can love, who they should worship, how they should dress, right? That's not our concerns. Our concern should be us. How do we make ourselves better? What do we need to do to make ourselves better instead of worrying about everybody else? You don't have a right to treat somebody poorly just because you don't like what they have on or how they look or anything like that.
You're 100% right now. It would be great if the world operated that way.
Well, if you surround yourself with people that are like-minded, right, that's the best you can do. Right?
That's the best you can do. The world will not follow along.
Exactly.
Yeah, I wholeheartedly agree.
Yeah, and so, like, the things that I've gone through and you and other people have gone through, there's a lot of mental illnesses involved, a lot of mental things that a lot of times you don't get counseling for, right? And so on my social media platform, I talk about counseling, and it's okay to seek therapy. It's okay for men to cry, right? A lot of times, you know, growing up, we were always taught, you know, you got to be tough and suck it up, right?
Of course.
Look what that got us. Look at the people now, you know, because of those same kind of ideas and you know, it didn't work.
I'm sure somebody said that same thing to Greg a lot of times.
I don't even think they did.
I mean, in terms, you got to be tough.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, that part.
That's what I mean. Yeah, like he's if there is such thing as toxic masculinity, that's it. Right. And it would come from someone saying, you can't express your feelings, you can't be sad, you can't.
So basically, you're holding it in, right?
And then when you let it out, it's in fury, and it's probably directed towards the person who might have told you it's a woman, right? It's all you kind of reenacting what you were told from your mother, or your parent, or your older sister, or whatever the case is. Yeah.
So I enjoy this dialogue because we're real men talking about real topics, right? Mm-hmm. A lot of times on my panel, you know, we talk about stuff like that, and that excites me because I'm always trying to find ways that people can get better. Right. I talk about generational wealth, right? I talk about men spending quality time with their children, right? Being in the home, not just being there, but being active and present.
Sure.
And that's why I wrote a book about Fatherhood Matters.
Yes.
Seeing how valuable, you know, it is to have a father and not having had one. So it wasn't a good thing.
I like the sort of rabbit trail that you can follow thematically from syrup sandwiches through the rest of your books. If you didn't listen to this podcast or know who Anthony was or had no familiarity with him at all, and you only had the books, you would still be about 80% right on who this guy is. Hey, there's even a picture, so you might even be 90%. But, I mean, you get all the history, you get all this experience, you get a lot of opinion, right? So the history is the syrup sandwiches, right? The opinion or the way of thinking is Fatherhood Matters, right? The motivation is the raw power. The Day We Forgot to Smile is almost like you looking at all these different situations in the world and finding a way to find the salient point and push it out in a short story. So every one of these you walk away with a different point. And if you keep in mind that these points were created from the guy who wrote Syrup Sandwiches, then the points make perfect sense, right? I'm gonna skip ahead and kind of ruin things in a sense. So if we talk about The Day We Forgot to Smile, there's a particular chapter where there's these two women, and they're good friends, and they went to college together or something like that. They got some history. They used to hang out all the time, kind of their formative stages. And one has just become a regular old housewife. Actually, not even a housewife. I don't think she has a husband. She's just there with her kids. Things ain't all that great. Money's a little tight. You know what I'm saying? And here comes her homie from college. Like, hey, girl, let's go out. I got you. Don't worry about it. You just need to go out and kick it and whoop-de-whoop. And this girl's living a life like a lot of us are. You know, she barely getting by. She counting all her money, making sure everything's cool. So she got grocery money and this, that, and the third, right? So the other girl, she's went out. You kind of get the impression from their interaction that she's the one who lives the wild life. She has the boyfriend. She does this, that, and the third. She's probably the traveler. Anyway, what ends up happening is you recognize how important money is for one person versus the other, right? And that have attitude versus the have not attitude, even between friends, kind of comes to head, and it makes sort of an explosion, if you will, in that chapter. And even that, even though you're not the woman, you're not the single parent, you're not the other woman, you're not the party girl, you're not in this story at all, but the lesson from the story sounds very much like a lesson that would come from the syrup sandwiches guy. Again, if you look at it in a linear fashion, right? Here's syrup sandwiches, here's where we've gone on to why do these stories sound this way? Well, they're reflections of the same person who poured his heart out in the syrup sandwiches, right? So one thing I always like about the books that I've done for you, minus recents a little bit because they're more fictional, is the other books are all like ways of coping with whatever's happened in life. I guess Reasons is too. It's just not from, well, I guess technically The Day We Forgot to Smile is fictional too because they're fictional stories. But Reasons is more exciting. There's more action. It's like, it feels like it's something I watch on Netflix or something like that.
And
you know what I mean?
You will soon.
Yeah, it feels like a Netflix show. But the other ones are they keep the same sort of themes in terms of struggle, dealing with money, dealing with relationships, people kind of outgrowing the circle that they're in, which is actually a really touching part to me about syrup sandwiches, because towards the, I think I'm on the right book. Towards the end, no, I'm thinking about something else. Sorry, I've done so many books that kind of bleed together. But one of the chapters in the Day We Forgot to Smile is about two brothers who, you know, they grew up together, and
like
then they got old and they kind of grew apart.
Yeah.
And the communication isn't the same, and it's almost like that friend that you love, but you don't talk to him that much anymore. And then when you call him, he feels like he ain't got time for you anymore, even though you guys have all this shared history. Right. And then you see how this person responds to the same situation that you've been in, because y'all sat on the same stoop. It's this other guy, right? This just sat in the same sort of situation. And then this one kind of turned out to be a little bit different than this one. And despite the common history, here's how both people sort of responded to all the things in that common history and what they became. So long-windedly, what I'm saying is, when you look at the history of all the books, or if you look at the trajectory of them, if you look at the themes and the way they're presented and kind of the outcomes of them, you can tell it's from the same person who's trying to tell you, here's what I went through, here's what I became, back from syrup sandwiches.
Well said, because I did that for a reason. Right? I wanted, when people read one of my books and they read another one, they can see different stories, right? But they can still feel that undertone. They know that's me speaking.
Yes,
right?
Yes.
So my voice is still in all of the books, whether it's fiction, nonfiction, whatever it is. And so I want to give people something that they can feel the genuineness in it, right? The realness in it, and feel like, you know what, it's relatable, even though it's traumatic, right? Even though it's, a lot of violence or whatever it is, mm-hmm. They can relate to it because they know things like that can happen.
Right.
So let me read something before we leave. I got like maybe 5 minutes left. So I wrote this down. I said, before we leave today, I want you to remember something. Life will test you. There will be moments when you feel overlooked, exhausted, disappointed, and even broken. There will be times when it feels like nobody understands the weight you carry, but your current struggles does not determine your final destination. I come from a life where struggle was normal. I know what it feels like to go without. I know what it feels like to carry pain quietly, but I also know what determination, fate, discipline, and perseverance can produce. Your story is still written. No matter what you've been through, no matter how many times life knocked you down, you still have purpose. So tonight, tomorrow, and every day moving forward, choose not to give up. And at the end, I would say, this is Anthony Owens, author of Serve Sandwiches, Choose Not to Give Up. Thank you for listening, and I'll see you on the next episode. But I still have more time, so I want to squeeze out every minute I can get. You know what I'm saying? I don't want to and then people say, "Oh, you shortchanged me out of 3 minutes." I don't need that drama in my life.
All right. So what do you do with your extra 3 minutes?
I talk about something else, right? I talk about the next time I go live, I'll be discussing my next book. So the next book after Serve Sandwiches was the Raw Power. Because I wanted to write a book for the children, because I felt like even though this book, any age for the most part can read it, if you're young, your parents can read it to you or whatever, but I wanted to address the bullying issue. And so I'll be talking about the bullying issue. I'll be talking about the challenges of just basically raising kids and having to deal with how they interact with when they're being bullied, right? Mm-hmm. How do you approach it, and how do you comfort them? What do you say to them? I like to talk about things that that people should talk about at home, around the table, if they do that anymore. And a lot of times that doesn't happen. A lot of times people are so consumed with their social media and all this other stuff, they don't even sit down and find out what's going on with these children. And so, and even on my social media, I tell people that these kids nowadays, they want somebody to talk to. They want to be able to have somebody to talk to, somebody that would listen to them, because their input matters too. Back in the day, the kid was like, "Get out of here, grown-ups are talking, mind your manners," right? Nowadays, these kids have things that they really want to talk about, and if you're shooing them away and not talking to them, they're going to talk to somebody else. They might get out there and get in trouble, right? There's a lot of bad things that can happen when you're not giving your kids the guidance, the attention, the love and nurturing that they need.
I agree. I think it was the wrong thing to do even back in the day, to say, "Hey, kids, you shouldn't be in the room because you're the children." But now it's more dangerous.
It is.
Back then, you just had to go to your room,
right?
Watch TV or something, right? But now they say, "All right, well, I'll find somebody who does give me that attention." And you don't want your child on the line looking for somebody to give them attention and answer the questions that you should have.
That is true. Yeah, because things are different now, right? Raising children, you got to be more intentional.
Yeah.
You have to be, right? And that's part of the problem. People have busy lives and they feel like they don't have time for their children. They don't have time to take care of the things that they need to. And what happens is the kid is left to go on their own, right? Yeah. And so, and I've told people this on numerous occasions. Some of the biggest struggles and challenges I had when I was growing up is not having anybody to talk to, no male companion to talk to, right? And so that's rough.
Yeah.
It really is.
It is. Yeah. Although what's rougher is probably to have a male person to speak to who tells you all the wrong things.
That's a good point.
That's probably worse.
I mean, just because you got somebody there,
don't mean it's the right person you should be talking to.
That's true. And like I said earlier, just because a male is in the home, that doesn't mean he's doing everything that should be, right? Amen. Just because you're there, like I said, you have to be active and present. So,
and your intentions have to be right.
Yeah. And so, listen, thank you all. Once again, you can follow me on any of my social media platforms at Books by Anthony Owens, or my website, www.antowens.com. And it's been a pleasure, and thank you for hanging out with me. Bear with me. This is my first podcast. It will definitely get better. I promise you that. And hopefully I can invite this young man to hang out with me a couple more times, because he did help me with these books. So thank you all, and I appreciate it. So
it's been a pleasure.
Has it?
It has.
Thank you, my man.
My man.
Appreciate you. So once again, Malik Washington, if you guys want to get them to narrate your books.
I actually think I set up a TikTok page.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I believe I did. Yeah, I did. When I did one of your last books, I did a TikTok page where I would be showing my narration skills. So my name is actually Maliek. And if you look me up on TikTok, even though I'm not there that often, it's Malik on the mic. Maliek on the MIC.
All right. Thank you. Take care, everyone.
Take care.
Thank you for tuning in to today's episode of the Books by Anthony Owens Podcast Show. We hope this was a conversation that truly inspired you and gave you something meaningful to carry forward. We appreciate you spending this time with us, learning, growing, and embracing knowledge that truly matters. Join us next week for another powerful and uplifting episode of the Books by Anthony Owens Podcast Show. Until then, stay healthy, stay encouraged,